Get going. Welcome. Thanks for joining us on this session today. So today we're getting together to do a little breakout conversation. A little bit about the format here. I'll just talk for a couple minutes, maybe about 5 minutes, and then we're going to do little breakout conversations. We're grouped together with a couple facilitators, which I'll introduce momentarily. But I really appreciate everyone coming. It's great to see everybody on the tail end of a fun conference, getting together, staying in touch. The goal of today's conversation is how AI and MLs are driving commercial value in CRE. So I think we've all been inundated by a lot of interesting and creative ideas around having different solutions that we've been seeing with AI. And what we wanted to do is just get together and have a practical talk about implementing the actual tools that we're using with AI and analytics in the space. It's been an amazing amount of investment, amazing amount of opportunity, but it's definitely a challenge to understand where it's been sitting. So we have facilitators that are mixed amongst the group here. I'll do an introduction in a minute. And everyone is actually working on thinking about where this is applied or actually practically applying that across the company. So it's going to be a good opportunity just to talk about a few of those examples. I'd like to just kick off and introduce myself and what we're doing here. So my name is Josh Miramont. I'm with a company called Blue Orange Digital. We are an advanced analytics and data infrastructure professional services firm. We've been working in commercial real estate for about 8 years now, and it's one of our larger verticals of effort. And we work, we're big Databricks and Snowflake partners, so as firms mature and start to need to build your internal data strategy, we come in and help with both consulting and implementation of that effort. So we've been thinking a lot about both how to get value out of these systems, and we've seen probably over 50 or 60 different use cases of data, analytics, and advanced modeling inside the space across a number of different levels in the real estate space. So to set the frame for the conversation we're having here, I think it's important to understand a little bit about why is this so hard to identify. There's, in many technological advances, you can point to, many different tools, and there's this great use case, and there's a challenge that exists inside of this area where you see so many different applications around it. And I think I'm going to do two things just to preface in the next 5 minutes. I want to give two frameworks that I use to try to identify where the best use cases sit, thinking operationally. So the thing that's coming out with really where machine learning and advanced analytics sit is I like to kind of simplify a little bit of what we're actually talking with here. The thing that we're actually working that's been kind of revolutionized by this technology is it's really just cheap prediction. So what you're looking for use cases is where there's any use case that has prediction. So if you're doing a trend forecast or market analytics, you're predicting certain characteristics. If you can identify those characteristics, what we're seeing with the advent and cheapening of this technology becoming widely available is effectively it's just getting cheaper. And so if you were to ask what we do for work, like this very complicated representation of a neural net here, this is how many engineers would explain, they'd come in, they talk about the nodes and the weighting and back propagation, explain this neural net. I actually find that, it's true, it's accurate, but I find that less compelling than using my background, which is in economics, and thinking about what this is just a downward sloping demand curve. In Economics 101, you look at a downward sloping demand curve, and if you take this idea of prediction getting very cheap and available, there are three things that happen in economics when you see a downward sloping demand curve. The first, you have a cheapening of the product makes it so it's more usable. So more problems are becoming prediction problems. If you take an example like ChatGPT, what the prediction function there is just predicting the next word, and effectively it's a tokenized all the words, and you're able to say, is this sentence the most likely sentence to answer the question that's being asked? And so that's all that we're really doing is predicting the next little chunk of words. And when we turn that prediction capability up so much, we get really good answers inside of language, and we've advanced natural language to ability where we're really accurate at predicting sentences that look like sentences we think would be good answers. So that's one thing. The second thing that happens is when something gets cheaper is things that were not predictive problems become predictive problems. So for example, language wasn't really extending this Gen AI application. language was something we couldn't really trust for ML to solve, and now prediction got good enough where Gen AI, we're seeing all these applications of how we're able to get good enough prediction for the language application. The third thing that's really happens with a downward sloping demand curve is effectively we get the ability for things that effectively use cases that were things that feed it, like data and the tooling around it, become more valuable as machine prediction gets cheaper and better. And so as these models get better, the things that are more impactful are actually the things that are harder to deal with. So that's where you're seeing, like, if the cost of coffee goes down, milk and sugar goes up. Classic kind of demand supply structure that exists in economics. That's the same thing with prediction. As prediction gets more available, the value infrastructure of our data and the tooling that we put in place becomes more valuable. And so that's where a lot of the challenges move when you're thinking about operationally implementing data solutions. So that's the high level idea. That one area is just identifying where there's repeatable prediction problems will usually reveal where there's investment to put into implementing a solution. So I want to now get tactical and operational, and then we'll do our breakout conversation. It's important, as I mentioned before, that to recall that the challenge of this problem is hard because it's a general purpose technology. So yeah, we're dealing with this, OpenAI has GPT, but really what AI is a general purpose technology that it's applied in so many different areas, and when you're looking for ROI, you're really stacking kind of the highest value metric ideas of where AI can be applied, or this prediction discovery can be applied in many different functions, and that stacks up to value. So there are, killer use cases are hard to identify. There are good ideas in here, but they're really rooted in the business problem. You have to figure out what would be solved by a predictive solution in that case. So there are three areas when I'm trying to work with a client to identify where we're usually applying kind of advanced analytics and AI. And with some of the advent of generative AI, we're seeing a big inversion of where can we get more conversational or generative solutions. That's something that's become good enough in many ways to provide value on top of it. And so usually you're adding generative AI into other solutions or helping a non-technical user communicate with analytics or doing analysis. There's a lot of layers on top of it, but there's this conversational and generative function that's really helpful to interface. The other two areas that have been foundational, though, are where if you can identify repeatable or automated tasks, that's an area that there's always a really good thing to put a system in place. And the thing that you're looking to is making a prediction on where that automated task or that next repeatable task can be solved. And then the third area are strategic or decision makings. And this goes core to analytics solutions that exist, where it's saying decision support, predictive analytics, process optimization, identifying those use cases sit in that third bucket. And I will countlessly say across the area, these three buckets, if you kind of go through an analysis of each of those areas, you will identify use cases that are breaking business processes in these buckets. You'll identify use cases that are really effective for finding solution and overall. So I pulled together a few areas where I found a lot of the work that we have seen use cases applied inside of businesses, and it's a lot of these are multiple uses. You'll see that there's overlapping. One of the things that's become amazingly effective recently with the kind of the cheapening of generative AI is not only just generative, but we've even seen, as I mentioned before, problems that were once not predictive became predictive. Well, under repeatable and automation, extracting unstructured and semi-structured data is much easier when you have a linguistic translation interface, which is what generative AI does. So repeatable automation, you'll see a number of companies around here, and getting data in the way that you need, even document workflow automation and better processing of that has become much cheaper and easier than it ever has before. So the two ways I think about just a kind of framework at the high level is kind of thinking about where there are those prediction problems. So wherever you're making a guess, or if a human is looking at a spreadsheet, inherently they're making a prediction with what the trends they see. Or if there's a process that's repeated, those are things where humans are kind of thinking of as a prediction opportunity. And then falling in these three buckets, you'll see an ability to kind of look through ideas that can be applied in one of these three areas. You'll usually uncover a number of business use cases that exist. So I'll let everyone break out now. The facilitators have a number of kind of questions I'll put up on the screen. If you want the slides or any of those breakouts, I put a QR code that you can download and get the details. We also have We'll be releasing next week a guide of how we think about some of the more operational and implementation efforts of what it takes to roll out advanced analytics and generative AI solutions. We'll be rolling that out, so feel free to scan the QR code. But here's a few questions to talk about. Let's break out to our groups and maybe have some conversations amongst the tables about where we've seen successive opportunities and where there are kind of challenges in implementation as well. Thanks so much.